Chapter 7. Mari investigates. 3:54 p.m. Saturday 15th of August, 1970. Hôtel Albert, Rue du Faubourg Saint-Denis, Paris. I didn't want Aileen to realize that the Major and me are working together, so I made that up about meeting Fergal, but it's a judgment on me not to lie, for I'm barely inside the Hôtel Albert lobby when Fergal pounces on me. Of course I do want to have a talk with him, but not necessarily in company with the Major, or Valerie, who is hovering near the reception desk. And I'm thinking that before I talk to anyone else at all, it would be a good idea to sit down and spear out all the meanings hidden behind the things Senga and Aileen have said just now. Because who knows? It might turn out that after I've thought it through I'd be asking Fergal something different. But before I can say a word, Fergal takes Liana's passport out of his pocket and hands it to me. It never occurred to me that Fergal would have Liana's passport. Why did he take it? Why does he still have it? Why is he giving it to me? Fergal, why didn't you give Liana's passport to Inspector Claremont? I didn't have it, not then. Well, you've got it now, and why dash? He grins at me, the cheeky wee spalpeen, and interrupts, drinkies before any more questions. He takes my arm to lead me into the bar. But right then I catch sight of the clock above the reception desk. It's 5 to 4. The Major will be turning up any minute. Hold on a second. I break away and march over to reception. When Major Peveril arrives and at the sound of his name the Major puffs up from one of the lobby chairs, blowing like a walrus. Ah, my dear, here I am. What's this young scoundrel been up to, eh? He jabs Fergal in the ribs with his cane, and I would be astonished at the way he's moved in the blink of an eye from the lobby chair to within striking distance of poor Fergal, only I'm not, because this time I was looking at the Major when he made his move, and I can see that he isn't really a decrepit old man at all. Why does he like to pretend that he is? He seems to want everyone to think that he's ancient and wobbly, but he's quite nimble, and now that I come to think about it, if he was stationed here during the war, and then he was demobbed with the rank of Major, it's quite likely that he was young when he was in Paris, much more likely than not. Why, he may not be much more than 50-ish, not old at all really. The Major has got a lot of explaining to do. But there isn't time to go into any of that now. I'm going to see to it that he and I have a long talk later, though. We go into the bar to talk. Valerie tags along too. I'd rather have talked to Fergal alone, but I am not going to be deterred by having the pack of them around me. One odd thing is going to get explained, at least. How did Fergal get Liana's passport? He's at the bar now, getting in the drinks, and turns to ask what I'd like. Thé café au lait, please. The Major takes a small beer, and Fergal gets a bottle of red wine to share with Valerie. He waves the wine bottle at her, pointing to the label, mutely asking her if it's the kind of wine she likes, and she gets a most peculiar look on her face. It's almost as if she doesn't want to drink with him, but it can't be that, they're friends. Yet it's upsetting her to see him waving that bottle. Another oddity. Oh, well, maybe it's bad for the wine if you wave the bottle about. The French are obsessed with the conditions under which wine is stored and drunk. Valerie nods at Fergal, it's the right kind of wine, and turns her head away, muttering. I catch a few words. My father comes to Paris after all these years and the words fade, silly fireworks, the words fade. It seems like forever before we're all sitting around a tiny bar table with our drinks and I can get back to the point. All right, Fergal, why didn't you give Liana's passport to Inspector Claremont? I didn't have it, not then. Fergal's grinning, thoroughly enjoying being the center of attention, and I remember how full of himself he was on the train. It's all a game to him. Well, it's certainly not a game to me. Poor Liana locked up in a Paris pokey, and all because this imbecile didn't tell the inspector the full story when he was questioned. But then I think back to how imperious Inspector Claremont had been. Maybe Fergal didn't get a chance to tell the inspector the full story. And it's obvious looking at him that he thinks he's done something very clever, so probably the quickest way to get to the bottom of it all is just to let him tell the three of us all about how clever he's been. He's a pest, but I smile at him and nod encouragingly, so he'll start talking. Not that he needs any encouragement. Well, he clutters up his story with a lot of irrelevant rubbish about what he had for his supper and why he decided to go out to a casino instead of sitting down with a good book like any sensible person would, but eventually he gets to where he's passing the Hotel Albert on his way to the casino down the street, and out sallies Liana for a breath of fresh air. They both exclaim about their paths crossing again like that so soon, and then she says there are no seats in the lobby, so she's come out to see if she can find a cafe. Well, he says I told her there'll be no cafes with empty seats, Makushla, not at this time on a Friday night in the heart of Paris. They're all of them crammed full by 8. And not the best place for a young lady on her own, either. Better come with me to the casino, where this early on there's plenty of seats to be had, and the darling place only a step down the road. So far, this matches what Liana told me. Just after 8:30 she went out to get a breath of fresh air. Fergal happened to be passing, and she saw no harm in accepting his invitation. After all, she had the brass neck to say, it's not like he's a stranger, they've been introduced by Valerie, and he'd given her his card with the promise to take her and me sightseeing if she likes. Liana said all that with a hangdog face which made it clear as crystal she knew fine and well what I'd have had to say about it if I'd been there. And why didn't you tell Inspector Claremont this, Fergal? He's all injured innocence. Sure, Anne. I did, Mari. I told the man the whole story, just like I'm telling it to you now. He drinks his wine, waiting to be asked to go on. The Major barks, get on with it, man. Well, Fergal can interpret that as an invitation or an order, up to him. He shrugs. Not much more to tell, Major. When we got to the casino, they wouldn't let Liana in, not even as my guest, without her passport. It's some regulation. Typical Frenchy double-think. If she's followed the regulation to hand in her passport at the hotel, how will she still have it to hand in according to regulations at the casino? He stops and has another drink. But you get your passport back again. Fergal lives in Paris. How does he not know that you get your passport back again after the police have inspected it? Mari's mental note. Be careful of Fergal. He may be a liar. Something's fishy here. I lean towards him. Yes, but she got in somehow, didn't she, Fergal? Wheel, yes and no. There's a ladies' room in the lobby and a sort of cloakroom with a couple of chairs. It's not part of the casino proper, so I said Liana should go and get herself a seat over there while I sorted it out, and she did. But I couldn't sort it out. And when I went to fetch her, she'd gone. The Major barks at Fergal passport, meaning Fergal should tell us how he got hold of it. I stand up. The Major, being old school, immediately rises also, almost by reflex. Fergal, being practically a card-carrying member of the classless society, stays seated. The Major glares down at him with still deeper disapproval. Young man. A lady has risen. Fergal doesn't even get it, so then I know that for all his airs, he wasn't born a toff. I lay a soothing hand on the Major's arm. Ellis, won't you please stay and entertain Valerie? I want Fergal to take me to this casino. We won't be long. Put like that, the Major has to sit down again. He can't possibly come with us. That would be rude to Valerie. A gentleman is never rude, except on purpose. Fergal is still seated, so I grab his ear and twist. Come along, ma bra laddie. I've taken a notion to see this not quite casino cloakroom. Fergal gets up, since it's that or lose his ear, and we head out to the casino. Aileen doesn't feel that she really got through to Harry, for all that she talked his ear off. It's all very well for him, living off the fat of the land with that casino raking in more money than you can count. He should remember his roots. Her mammy had been good to him when he was a scabby-kneed ween, and for that matter she had been good to him too, pulling him out of fights and sharing her play piece with him most days. If not for free school dinners and her mammy giving him his tea as often as not and all those play pieces she'd shared with him, he'd likely have starved what with that druggy mother of his eye off in cloud cuckoo land and him no fitting in at all at school, what with his dafty stories about how much better everything was in Durham than in Glasgow. Her friends had been glad to see the back of him when his mammy got put into the hospital and his daddy came to fetch him back to Durham, but she'd stayed in touch and lied for him that weekend they'd spent together in Scarborough when the police came for him. He'd have done time then if not for her, and when he did do time later she'd been there for him in his trouble. He should remember that and help her in her trouble now. Yes, that rat of a taxman is dead and gone, but that's not enough to save her, not on its own. She'd never meant to cheat on her taxes. It was just she hadn't ever had any money except for her wages, where they take the taxes first and give you the rest, and so she hadn't known she needed to file a tax return saying her granny had left her a wee bit of money. And by the time she found out about the tax that was due, she'd spent what she had. The tax wasn't all that much, really. She could probably have managed just the tax somehow, but that slimeball Charlie Stout had gone and written all those lies into the tax records about her doing it on purpose. She'll never be able to pay all the penalties and fines. Harry needs to remember how much he owes her and help her out. He's got people who understand these things. He needs to get one of them to go into the tax records and take out everything Stout said about her. Then there will be just the tax due, and she can pay that somehow. I ask Fergal, as we're coming up to the casino door, which genuinely is a mere step down the road from our pension, how did you come to have Leanna's passport, Fergal? Well, when Leanna and me went there yesterday, as the luck chances the fella on duty at the entrance was a sort of a pal of mine. He's on the same shift today, 2 until 10. The passport got handed in just before he came on duty, and because he remembered Leanna came in with me he gave it to me to give to her instead of holding it in lost property for the gendarmes. Curiouser and curiouser. Who had Leanna's passport yesterday? How did they get it? Why do they want to be rid of it today? And how come Fergal's inside a casino nattering away with his pal before it's even turned 4 in the afternoon? Doesn't he ever work? We go in, and while Fergal is explaining to his friend the entrance attendant that I only want to have a quick look at the cloakroom seating, I'm into the ladies. But I can't see any powder room attendant, which is surprising in a place like this. Just as Leanna had said, there's a mirrored seating area for applying your makeup with a wee counter to put your lipstick and stuff on. That's where she sat down and fell asleep. She came to with her head on the counter, and no idea whether she'd been out cold for just seconds or for hours. Oh, if only there'd been a powder room attendant to alibi her. But maybe there was a powder room attendant here yesterday. Or maybe one of the casino's lady members came in and saw her. Dear Father in heaven, I send up a silent prayer, please let someone have seen her. Please. I'll never be late for the mass again. Fergal and me spend so long in the casino trying to find someone who has seen Leanna that we nearly miss the tours group excursion to the Eiffel Tower. But Fergal happens to see Valerie passing the casino's open doorway with the Major at her side and the city break tourists crowding her like a gaggle of little ducklings all choreying in around their mother, so we rush out in time to catch up with them before they're lost to sight. We catch a bus to the Eiffel Tower. Valerie has week-long full bus passes for all of us as part of our tour package. I hand Leanna's bus pass to the Major. Fergal, being resident in Paris, has one of his own. The bus ride takes us more than 25 minutes. I whip out my notebook as we come up to the tower entrance and scribble down a quick aide-memoire. Mari's note, update all timeframe notes. Lots of wrong times plus 25 minutes bus to tower. As we're queuing up to get into the lift to the top, Valerie realizes that we're a ticket short. For once Yvonne departs from her profound calm, saying a bit hysterically that she wants to take her Charlie's ticket and lay it in his grave. Valerie has to tell her, as tactfully as she can, that Mr. Stout had taken his own ticket from her the previous night. Yvonne bursts into tears, and Valerie is very good with her, very soothing, and after a bit of a cry, which probably did her good, she's been too calm, Yvonne starts wiping her eyes. So then Valerie returns to the ticket issue. Leanna's ticket is a spare, but we have brought 2 extras, Fergal and the Major. I point out that Fergal is my guest, and since I invited him, I'll go and get an extra ticket. Fergal makes no demur, so I turn aside to the ticket booth, and of course the major peels off with me because he's too much of a gentleman to let any lady stand in any queue unescorted whilst he's on hand to look after her. It's sweet and charming and as irritating as all get out. We're in the classless 70s, not the 1900s. Why? I've friends who don't even hold swing doors open for me anymore. Mind, they say things like, "You see, I am not holding this door open," or "I am not waiting for you to go through this door first, because I respect you as an equal," which is even more irritating in its own way. I always say I won't feel disrespected if they hold the door open, but they pay me no heed. The reason I'm in the ticket queue, of course, is to see if anyone remembers anything about when Valerie came for the group's tickets last night, and the major doesn't merely start talking before I can, he takes over completely. He begins and breaks into very rapid and voluble French, using a lot of gestures. I don't understand a word. The three people in the ticket booth all respond at once, breaking into even faster and more excitable speech, all talking together, with huge movements of their hands. In fact, there's so much waving of hands going on that I can get the gist of what they're saying even though I don't understand the words. When Valerie came last night, she was accompanied by a man. But she didn't pick up the tickets, not then. She went away with the man, and later she came back on her own. When she came, it was nearly time for them to close up. They had the window half down, but of course for her they opened it again, and gave her the group's tickets and then closed up. I'm stunned. The ticket office doesn't close until 10 o'clock. Can it be that Valerie, who seems so kind-hearted, is really the killer? But then the major whips out Polaroid photos, taken from the dossier files, of Charlie Stout and Mr. Brown and Fergal and Jimmy and Reese and lays them all in a row. The ticket people all smile at me, fondly imagining that they are speaking English. Yes, Ari, eat a cherie. Pointing to the photo of Mr. Harry Brown, who had stayed at home all night from the moment the train got in, according to his wife. And they call him by his first name. They must know him well. What reason does he have to come here often enough that the ticket people know him well? Mari's mental note: what business takes Mr. Brown to the Eiffel Tower so frequently? We don't go up the tower. We go back to the Major's hotel instead, for some soothing tea and a good solid dinner, which by now I badly need. It has been a topsy-turvy day, one stunning discovery after another, and my brain is bursting with it all. In fact, I have quite a bad headache. But in spite of my headache, I'm brimful of curiosity. It feels like the more I learn, the more unanswered questions there are.